The return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the U.S. late Friday came with a plot twist. Mistakenly deported to an El Salvador prison, accused as a gang member and barred from reentry, the Justice Department now says a grand jury indictment charges him with transporting undocumented migrants within the U.S. The Abrego Garcia case is just an example of how administration decisions link immigration with national security and the evolving rules, and that can be very confusing and concerning, especially in places like South Florida, where so many have so much at stake. And we start right there with our panel today. Dottie Joseph is a South Florida state representative, immigrant advocate, and an attorney who has worked with refugees and in the civil rights arena. And Angel Leal is an immigration attorney in Miami whose clients are now facing big changes. So happy to have you both at the table for this discussion. Angel, as the immigration attorney among us, what practically changes come midnight tonight?
It's devastating for a lot of families, particularly those families that have petitioned for their loved ones, and I'm talking about non-immediate relatives, spouses of lawful permanent residents, minor children of lawful permanent residents, adult single children of residents, married children of citizens, siblings of citizens who have been waiting years to come legally through family reunification are now not going to be able to do that during the proclamation, the existence of the proclamation.
Even if they're holding a visa already?
If they have the visa prior to June 9th at 12:01 a.m., they can still immigrate. But after June 9th, 12:01 a.m., today, 12:01 a.m., then at that point, they will no longer be eligible to receive that visa.
I can imagine the constituent calls you're getting.
Oh yeah, I mean, between constituent calls, people from around the country, as we know, federal law impacts everybody, right? And if you're in the Haitian community, I'm getting quite a few calls. But I represent a district that has a huge population of Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and Cubans, right? All of whom were dually impacted, not just by this travel ban, but by the recent court ruling on the end of the Biden parole program, the CHNV program.
Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela.
Exactly. So trying to navigate that has been a challenge for people, and I'm telling them to just calm down. The travel ban, as you already heard, only impacts people who don't already have a visa and those who have not already submitted their application and it hasn't been approved.
You know, you and a couple of your colleagues at the state level, mostly Democrats, had a Zoom call this week. When we got the notice of the Zoom call, it's denouncing what the travel ban and what is going on. And I remember saying to one of my colleagues, the word denounce also indicates it's not a state issue. It's a federal issue. What can be done at a state level, if anything?
So, I mean, at the state level, we have seen the state getting involved in immigration when it has no business doing so. Under the current administration, we've had 2 special sessions on immigration already. And what we see both at the state and the federal level is the evisceration of our constitutional rights. And when I say our constitutional rights, people think, oh, it's just, immigrants or it's just the illegals. I hate that term because no human is illegal. But what's actually going on is with any kind of government that's leaning into fascism, it starts with whatever vulnerable group that's the target. And as they test how far they can push with the Constitution, those evisceration of rights happens for everybody. The Constitution protects that each person will have due process, regardless of immigration status.
Right, and I think you get to the heart of the problem here, because there are people who really would like to see people who come to this country illegally be let out, be taken out, and consider that just a basis for national security, which is this travel ban. The actual due process, I'd like you to talk about, because is due process happening? Because that is the constitutional component of everything that needs to happen for each individual. Is that happening with this travel ban?
Arguably no, and it's an all-out assault at the state, in Florida, and at the federal level.
What is not happening? Break that down for us.
Basically, people are going to court. They've been issued notices to appear. They're told to present themselves at a specific date and time before an immigration judge. The Office of the Principal Legal Advisor, which are the prosecutors for ICE, are dismissing those actions. ICE agents are waiting outside in the hallway for these immigrants who are lawfully reporting, and many of them lawfully entered the country, so that they can be subjected to expedited removal or mandatory detention. And so there are all kinds of examples. This week, as a matter of fact, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled that Senate Bill 4C, which happened to criminalize people who came in illegally into the country, but then come into Florida. The state of Florida is trying to penalize those people.
Made it a state rule.
Exactly right. And the federal court correctly, in my opinion, said, wait a second, that's in the federal purview.
Exactly.
That's federal jurisdiction. The state can't enforce federal immigration laws. And so there's still litigation regarding this, but we see that it's just this atmosphere of trying to, as the representative correctly says, eviscerate constitutional protections and due process that applies to everyone in the United States, regardless of their immigration status.
So technically speaking, the session is still underway for budget issues. You're going back to Tallahassee this week.
Not this week. We're supposed to go back on the 16th because most of the substantive policy stuff is concluded. However, we still have to vote on the budget, which is our one constitutional duty.
We're actually going to talk about that coming up in a couple of minutes. But is there a space for doing something at the state level, because there is now state immigration law, to address whatever issues that you think are not being addressed with this due process?
Well, I will just reiterate what he just said about the 11th Circuit decision. The state has no business getting involved in immigration. That is not that's not our purview. Immigration is a federal issue, and it should stay a federal issue. And I think the court correctly identified that. So my answer is we should not be doing it. Going back to your prior question, however, I wanted to kind of unpackage the premise about the basis for the travel ban. You had tied it to illegal immigration, and it has nothing to do with that. In fact,
no, just for the record, the administration ties it to national security.
Correct.
Yeah.
And even though he said that, when announcing the travel ban, he had identified a recent terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado, but that person was Egyptian. Egypt is not on the list, right? So we're trying to connect dots, not you necessarily, obviously. I'm talking about the administration is trying to connect dots that don't actually exist. When they laid out this attack on immigrants, they tried to say we're going after illegal criminals, etc. But us who operate in this space know and have seen this before, and we knew it would lead to racial profiling, and we knew it would lead to some of the chaos that we're seeing with the families and stuff throughout the district and throughout the country. And in all 50 states in this past year, this past week, we have had protests against these ICE operations all around the United States.
So in the really short time we have here, is there a path forward here to decouple immigration and communities and this new travel ban?
I don't think that they're directly related, right? The travel ban has to do with issuing visas and who can continue to enter. Now, is it part and parcel of a larger attack on Black and brown immigrants? Absolutely. And I think anybody who's paying attention can see that. And I hope our elected officials at the federal level here in Florida see that. Cubans are under attack. Haitians are under attack. Venezuelans are under attack.
You're shaking your head. I have about 30 seconds from your space as an immigration attorney.
We can't look at this in the vacuum. You got to look at the travel ban in conjunction with the TPS litigation, revoking the TPS for the Venezuelans, not extending the TPS for the Haitians that runs out in August. The Venezuelan TPS runs out in September. The way that they're interpreting immigration law for mandatory detention and expedited removal in immigration court, ICE raids with non-targeted persons being subjected to detention by ICE, all of this, the way that the immigrants are being treated at detention facilities, all of this is happening at the same time. It's an all-out assault on immigration, legal immigration, and the rights of people to be able to appear before an immigration judge and contest their removability from the United States.
And South Florida at the tip of that spear. Dottie Joseph, Angel Leal, great to have you at the table.
Thank you for having us.